Hello and welcome to The World Today. I'm Temitope Fagbemi. Coming up on today's program, Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe expresses confidence in Donald Trump, says they can build a relationship of trust. US President Barack Obama holds talks with Angela Merkel and other EU leaders in Germany. And at least 73 people die and 110 are injured as a fuel tanker explodes in Mozambique. A number of Turkish officers posted to NATO have sought asylum from the alliance since the country's failed military coup in July. The organization's Secretary General, Jens Stoltenberg, says the officers had requested asylum in the countries where they had been posted, but he gave no names, numbers, or reasons for the request. The countries involved will consider the cases individually. Turkey has dismissed, suspended, detained, or arrested tens of thousands of people since the July coup attempt. Many of them have been in the military, although others are teachers, policemen, judges, and journalists. Lithuania has warned European leaders that Russian President Vladimir Putin may test NATO in the weeks before US President-elect Donald Trump is sworn in. Foreign Minister Linas Linkevicius says he is very afraid for the Baltics as well as the Syrian city of Aleppo. The fear is that the United States is keen to see Russia as a potential partner and reluctant to share the view in Eastern Europe that Moscow presents a potent and immediate military threat. Lithuania believes its dark view of Russia's intention is justified by its geography and its history. But Russia insists it is not a threat, arguing that NATO is responsible for stoking regional tensions by expanding eastward and moving its military hardware towards Russian borders. The Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe says he has great confidence in US President-elect Donald Trump and he believes he can build a relationship of trust. Mr. Abe held talks with the next US president in New York and he described the meeting as candid with a warm atmosphere. However, some of Mr. Trump's campaign rhetoric has cast doubt over long-standing U.S. alliances, including with Japan. The meeting was Mr. Trump's first face-to-face meeting with a world leader since winning the presidential election. Well, U.S. President Barack Obama has met with European leaders in Berlin today as part of a farewell tour of Europe. German Chancellor Angela Merkel, French President François Hollande, Italian Prime Minister Matteo Renzi, Spanish Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy, and UK Prime Minister Theresa May held talks in the German capital with Mr. Obama. On this trip, he is seeking to reassure US allies that Mr. Trump will maintain key core US strategic relationships around the world, including with NATO, once he leaves office in January.
U.S. President Barack Obama arrives for meetings with European leaders in Berlin on Friday on his final trip to Germany as president. He was greeted by the German Chancellor Angela Merkel upon arrival and posed for the media on the red carpet. Mr. Obama later held talks with Mrs. Merkel, as well as French President François Hollande, Italian Prime Minister Matteo Renzi, Spanish Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy, and British Prime Minister Theresa May.
Peace, cooperation, and stability.
On Thursday, President Obama gave a strong endorsement of Mrs. Merkel and used the visit to Berlin to warn Russia about the consequences of intervening in the U.S. election.
My hope is that the president-elect coming in takes a similarly constructive approach, finding areas where we can cooperate with Russia, where our values and interests align, but that the president-elect also is willing to stand up to Russia where they are deviating from our values and international norms. I don't expect that the president-elect will follow exactly our blueprint or our approach, but my hope is that he does not simply take a realpolitik approach and suggest that, if we just cut some deals with Russia, even if it hurts people, or even if it violates international norms, or even if it leaves smaller countries vulnerable, or creates long-term problems in regions like Syria, that we just do whatever is convenient at the time.
President Obama is also hopeful that the New York businessman, who has never previously held public office, would jettison controversial campaign rhetoric when he enters the White House and keep democratic values in mind as he chooses his staff.
If people, whether they are conservative or liberal, left or right, are unwilling to compromise and engage in the democratic process and are taking absolutist views and demonizing opponents, then democracy will break down.
President Obama is scheduled to leave Berlin today for Peru, the final stop on his trip.
Well, let's get more on this story from the VOA's Luis Ramirez in London. You're welcome to the program, Luis.
Good to be with you.
What more can you tell us about the meeting President Barack Obama held with EU leaders in Germany?
Well, it was one, as Ford just said, he tried very hard to reassure leaders that the relationship between the United States and Europe will be enduring, that it will be strong, that at the core of it nothing will change, and that because the values that are at the basis of that relationship are the same no matter who's in charge. In fact, he made that reassurance again today, saying that no matter whether it's a Republican or a Democrat, the relations between Europe and its the European partners and the United States is intact. There's just too much in common. Now, what I will say is that it was a rather emotional meeting, especially at the end when Angela Merkel bade farewell to the U.S. president. She accompanied him to his limousine and watched as he drove away. Almost looked like she was ready to break down. This is a relationship that spans 8 years. They had much in common. And although Mrs. Merkel has said that she will work with Donald Trump, she told Mr. Obama she will miss him. She thanked him heartily.
Now, Mr. Obama, like you said, has been seeking to assure allies that their relationship with the U.S. will remain intact even after he leaves office. Now, do you think European countries and NATO believe this assurance?
There is certainly an air of uncertainty across the continent. People are nervous. I wouldn't go as far as saying worried, but they certainly know that business will not be the same. What is troubling to leaders, to some leaders in this part of the world, is that the United States has consistently, over the last 7 decades, pursued a policy of openness, of engagement, and guaranteeing the safety or the security of NATO members. Now, Donald Trump has not really deviated a great deal from that policy, and at least in his statements. But what he has done is shaken people by saying that those guarantees are not automatic. He has said that the United States won't necessarily come to the defense of those NATO members that do not pay their minimum contributions to NATO. This is a line that the Obama administration has used as well. The United States has for years been calling for NATO members to pay their fair share, but it is the first time that a leader has said that the protection, the guarantee, is not automatic.
Now, during his visit, President Obama issued a warning to Mr. Trump in his dealings with Russia, cautioning that on issues like Ukraine and Syria, Moscow must be confronted head-on. How do you think Europe is expecting Mr. Trump to tackle the conflict in Ukraine when he's sworn into office?
That is a very complex issue because the United States and members of the EU, although they do both agree and that Russia needs to stop interfering in Ukraine, and they both have agreed on sanctions. In fact, that was reaffirmed on Thursday. And today, when leaders of a number of EU countries meeting in Berlin with Mr. Obama agreed that sanctions should remain in place until Russia starts to implement the Minsk agreements. Although they do agree on that, there's also they also diverge in their views and certainly in the intensity of their desire to have Russia or to clamp down on Russia. And the reason is that unlike the United States, the EU countries, especially Germany, are highly dependent on Russian energy, on Russian oil and gas, and they have quietly been hinting that they would like very much for those sanctions to be lifted. Of course, what they want is for Russia to comply with the Minsk agreements and have the sanctions lifted that way. But on several occasions, German officials in particular have voiced impatience and certainly the hope that that sanctions will be lifted. Now, if you ask me about Ukraine, well, there's a great deal of pessimism about what will happen under the Trump administration, because Trump has said has indicated that he will largely have a hands-off approach. He has said things like he doesn't believe that Vladimir Putin is interested in invading all of Ukraine, and that perhaps the United States should not have been as involved as it was. And so there's a great deal of pessimism in Kiev as we speak.
So, Louis, how do you think Europe will remember Mr. Obama as the President of the United States?
Well, we remember that when Barack Obama took office, he was treated like a rock star here in Britain and on the continent. He was seen as a U.S. leader who represented very much a departure, especially from what we had seen in the previous 8 years, and the years when the Iraq and Afghanistan wars were flaring. He was seen as a departure from the sort of hawkish image that the United States had in those 8 years, and a more conciliatory, more engaging figure. And so all that came out in these last few days when he said goodbye to his European partners, who thanked him profusely for that engagement, for that reaching out that these 8 years represent for the Europeans.
The viewer is Luis Ramirez. Thank you so much for joining us on The Wall today.